Hey, and welcome back to the Flow Show. I'm Joanna Turner, Intuitive Business Mentor, and I'm so excited to be back with you today. We've had a few weeks off, not planned, but life has happened. And I've been on a little adventure since I last saw you, so I'll share a little bit about that. And then we're going to dive in today talking a little bit more about planetary grid work and Scotland, Scottish heritage. One of the things I've been discovering a little bit more about is Scottish spirituality, because I had rejected it so badly earlier on in my life. So we're going to talk a bit more about that. And then we have a very exciting announcement, possibly, definitely the most exciting thing I have had happening in my business for the last few years, except obviously starting this podcast, which has been wonderful and I've loved it. But this is significant for me, and hopefully it's something you would like to join me in. And the topic of today will all make sense a little later on when I tell you a bit more about what exciting things are happening and all coming together. So let's dive into it. I've got quite a lot to share, and we'll just get going. So apologies for having disappeared for a few weeks. I have had a great time. There's been no major problems apart from the fact that I have recorded or tried to record 4 different episodes, and I really have not liked the quality of the recording of the first 2. Even I spent a couple of hours trying to edit both of them, and it just wasn't there. So I scrapped it because I want this podcast to be as good as it can be for you. So this is the 3rd attempt today, 3rd time lucky. So hopefully it's a good one. Anyway, we'll get there. So since we last spoke, we have had the eclipse. It feels like that was a million years ago, even though it was just in April. But things are happening so quickly. Time is absolutely flying. And I really hope that you fared well through the eclipse window. I know it felt like a lot. It was really intense, and a lot of people have felt, and I did as well, I felt this like just releasing of layers and layers of stuff. I kind of felt reborn in a sense. And I've talked a little bit on previous podcasts about the Phoenix rising energy. And I really felt that I was sort of able to take this big, deep breath and sort of rise out of the ashes in a sense. And everything sort of just crystallized. My idea for what I'm going to share with you later came, and everything has just flowed. So it's been really exciting and quite wonderful since then. Things feel fast. And I'm sure you have noticed, I don't know, just the weeks I turn around and it's Friday already. And I'm like, how did that even happen? So it is exciting, and it is, lots happening. So, of course, for the eclipse, I was pulled somewhere auspicious, back to near Roslin Chapel on the Rose Line, back at my sister's house for the eclipse. So that was quite unexpected, but wonderful. I was there on my own, checking in on our cat while they were on holiday. So I was definitely not expecting to be there on that day, but it just made sense. So that was really cool getting to be there. And then I headed off to visit my friend and her gorgeous new puppy, who have a cottage in Sweden. She's just got a new place that she moved into in February. And I was so happy to go and check it out and meet her or see her. We hadn't seen each other since I had left Australia 3 years ago. So that was wonderful. And I got to hang out with her gorgeous little puppy, Bean. He was just magnificent. And of course, I was there on a cool date for the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. And as I was on the plane going there, everything had sort of solidified for me for my idea and the announcement I'll be making later, which is funnily enough linked to dragons. And it will all become a bit clearer later on when I get into it. But funnily enough, the theme for Sweden was all about dragons. Everywhere we went, dragons. And my friend was like, there's another one. There's another one. And so it was just really fun to be in that energy and feeling like every time I turned around, there was another sign, another synchronicity that dragons were definitely the way to go. So that was just really awesome. We visited Stockholm, the old town, went over to Skansen village, which was really cool, historical, cultural place. And then we were able to go the next day up to Uppsala and visited some Viking graves and the cathedral there and some other places. So that was really fun. So heading back on the planetary gridwork discussion. So we've talked a few times about the work, the planetary gridwork, and it's this sort of, for me, it's an intuitive feeling that I should be going somewhere. And it's sort of unexplainable. It doesn't always make sense, but there's this urge to go somewhere. And then usually when I join the dots back, I can see that it was actually a sacred site that I was drawn to, or a very potent energy point on the planet. And for whatever reason, I had to be there. And I can sort of now, joining the dots back helps me join the dots forward a little bit as well. And I know sometimes it's a bit clearer about why I am being invited somewhere or I'm going somewhere. So, and this all links in with what we're talking about. So these beautiful portals of energy, like Rosalind Chapel, like these beautiful burial grounds in Sweden, they're all originally on very potent energy points, these vortexes where the ley lines meet. I don't know if I mentioned this is my third go at this, but the dragon lines, they're called in China, song lines in Australia. So where these lines meet are very potent energy points, and it's where the veil is thin, they call it. The veil between heaven and earth, between the two worlds, is very thin, and so they can be points where mystical things happen. You might get downloads, you might get like very clear visions, you might feel a past life connection, you might feel like a past life memory comes up. And often when I'm in places like this, I get goosebumps and I just know intuitively why I'm supposed to be there. And it's just really, really exciting. And often when I go there, I open the Akashic records of the site and see if there's any healing work that they want me to do, or connect with the site and sort of ask why I'm there, that kind of thing. So I really love going to these places. And of course, it's lovely to visit churches and cathedrals, but they are often built on other sacred sites that were there previously. And a lot of these sites were purposefully destroyed and replaced by churches. So the old cultures and the old sort of spiritual ways were not available. You had the church replaced it. And I remember that coming up really clearly when Notre Dame in Paris went on fire, and there was a lot of people talking about how it was a representation of the feminine, but there was a sort of a covering up of the original site with that cathedral. So yeah, interesting sort of stuff that goes on with that. The whole point of going to these places, it can be very personal. It can feel like a spiritual mission. It can feel like you're going home. It can feel like you want to connect with your ancestors. There's lots of different reasons you would go to these places. And also it can just be fun and interesting and historical at the same time. So I do love going to them. And when I've been sort of sitting with all of this and the energy and my maybe rejection a little bit of Scotland and my Scottish heritage, I was sort of trying to figure out why that might be. And I think part of it was growing up, my family, we watched the soaps Neighbours and Home and Away, which is Australian TV, religiously. We watched American shows like Saved by the Bell, 90210, and really that was what we grew up watching. And so there was nothing based in Scotland, thank goodness. But we're sort of projecting out onto looking into these other cultures that I just thought looked far more interesting and exciting, and usually just with a lot better weather. So I think that was part of it. And maybe with the Sex and the City coming out when I was about 17, 18, I was highly influenced by the glamorous life of the big lights of the city in New York, and went over and visited there as soon as I physically could, because I was so enchanted by something that was so different. And I think for whatever your heritage is, whatever your homeland is, we can just think it's so normal. Like, why would anyone want to come and visit here? Or it's something that you have just grown up with, that you take for granted. I certainly did. But at the same time, there's always a little part of me that was proud to be Scottish, even though I rejected it quite heavily. But when I look back now, I can start to see that I think my family had started my gridwork journey for me when I was a child. And recently I just pulled out some photograph albums because I wanted to confirm that I had been to the places that I thought I had been to. So because there's a big Scottish pentagram with geometrics and the matching mathematics to the Great Pyramids of Egypt, and very spiritually significant points. And I'm seeing this big pentagram, and I was like, oh, I think I've been there. And then I realised my parents had taken me to the very top corner up in Orkney, and they'd also taken me to Cape Wrath, this another point of this thing. And I was like, oh my goodness, I've actually been to loads of these places in this big, very important pentagram within Scotland. And I've started again joining the dots, and I was like, oh, I wonder if that's why. So definitely sort of dragged around these sacred sites and ancient stone circles and burial sites as a child. I didn't know, I didn't understand, I wasn't particularly excited about it. But now I'm like, oh, of course I had to go to Orkney and to these random places. And I realised when I was doing my first job as an accountant, I was sent up to the Outer Hebrides off the west coast, up to the Isle of Harris and Lewis, repeatedly for weeks and weeks at a time on my own, which was so bizarre. And there's nobody else from the office. I think my manager came up once or twice, but I would end up on this very remote island where we had to take a very rickety plane to get to, and I would spend weeks and weeks there. And now I can see, oh, that's another point on the pentagram. Of course it is. And that starts to make more sense. I'm like, right, there was a reason I had to go and sit in that dusty office for weeks at a time, counting bales of wool and things at Tweed Factory. Very cool. But I can sort of see, looking back now, I can join the dots on some of my earlier journey, and especially around Scotland that we've talked a little bit about on the podcast before. So, and then I also started thinking, oh, what if this all started way before me? And my mum travelled extensively in the 60s, long before backpacking was a thing. She took off to Australia. She took a cruise ship, and it took her months to get to Australia. They stopped in lots of different ports all over the world. She stayed a couple of years, worked all around Australia. I think she had 14 jobs, documented it very heavily. We have been exposed to that as children a lot. And then she took a cruise ship, a different route back, for several months. So Mum, this is long before the internet, long before, you could barely phone home because it was too expensive. So she travelled extensively then. And interesting, I was sort of thinking, one of the things she did was she spent 6 months teaching. She was a school teacher, primary teacher, and she spent 6 months out in the outback in Australia teaching Aborigines who had only been discovered maybe 5 to 7 years previously. And she absolutely loved it. And on that adventure, she was able to go and explore Uluru, Ayers Rock, And in those days, you were allowed to walk up it and around it and be on it. And that was one of the places I didn't quite get to. I was trying to get there, but as COVID closed in and then I had to leave, it just didn't happen. So I was thinking, I wonder if my mum having been there and then she went back again with my dad in 99, I thought, I wonder if that's maybe enough for my energy, because as you probably know, you were in your mum as a little egg. Your mother is born with all the eggs she will ever have. So when she was born, your little egg self already existed. And that means you're also in your granny. You're also a little egg in an egg in your granny kind of idea. So I was like, maybe this started before that. Maybe it wasn't just my mum that did some of that seeding for me. Maybe it was my granny too. Maybe my little being was started a lot before that. So my grandfather had been in the Merchant Navy. He was a chief engineer. And once you sort of make your way up to that point, you're able to take your significant other with you on your adventures. So that would have been back probably in the 40s and 50s. They travelled extensively around the world. So very unusual again in those days, and probably where that love of travel came from originally. So this adventure is way before me, way before you, and really it's something beyond what I really have any understanding of, and that is okay. So along with this rejection of my Scottishness, my heritage, I realised it came up maybe 2018 more so. There was a lot of talk of the cultural appropriation of Eastern spirituality. So things like yoga, meditation, Buddhism, all of that kind of stuff are Eastern philosophies that many of us found when we were looking for something. When we started exploring our spirituality, that's where we went. We often a yoga class is the doorway into a lot of these things for people. And there were so many people getting so angry about people appropriating their culture. For me, I know it's a sensitive topic, but anything that I was involved in, I wouldn't say it was appropriation. It was appreciation, if anything, and really a natural following of the breadcrumbs, of joining the dots of where my energy took me, what I discovered next, where I went. The next teacher would just appear and I would just learn what was in front of me. There was certainly no plan attached to it, and no wish to be taking something from somewhere that I shouldn't have been. And my journey naturally led me from different healers to different shamans and into the South American traditions of the Andes, and working deeply with shamans and teachers from there and plant medicines of those places. I feel like I'll get into that story at some point on the podcast, but it's a lot to talk about. So, but none of that again was done with any negative intent, and only deep reverence and appreciation for those cultures and the people and the medicines. So but it did lead me in those moments to check myself, to consider, what am I using? Why have I not been using my own spiritual culture and heritage? And that led me on a bit of a journey to find out that the West has very little, because it has been so stamped out. East, in a sense, are very lucky to still have their wisdom and their philosophies available and still practiced and celebrated. And in the West, and certainly in Scotland and a lot of Celtic cultures, were really squished and intentionally stamped out in various ways over many centuries. So it was just interesting to me. So if I had my own that I could easily go and look at, I absolutely would have, but it just wasn't there. I've mentioned before, I grew up going to the Church of Scotland, but for me, I never felt anything. I didn't feel any energy. I didn't feel any particular love or healing, or these places just felt very bland and cold for me. My family, I found out not that long ago, since I've come home as well, were very strict religious members of a wee free church that I'd never even heard of. So these things, again, are not really practiced so much nowadays. And my parents kind of went to the church, kind of didn't, had a bit of a crisis of their own faith as well. And, we didn't really have any further education on that. So partly out of ignorance, partly out of just not knowing any better, it just wasn't really passed on or passed down to us. I won't get into a full Scottish history lesson, but there were various reasons that our traditions were sort of stamped out. One being Viking and Nordic invasions into Scotland. We have, on my mum's side, she's had her DNA done. We have some Scandinavian DNA. So the Vikings have obviously mixed with my heritage. On my mum's side, we have a lot of fishermen going back many years, shopkeepers, that kind of thing. A few publicans, but mainly quite humble Scottish beginnings with a little bit of Scandinavian thrown in there. We've had different other things happen with the introduction of the church and things like that. As I mentioned, they would come and erase the sacred sites that were there, build churches on top, really try and push their Christianity on people. And so the Scottish traditions, rituals, festivals, all that kind of stuff were just kind of died out or destroyed, literally. So the other part of it, there was a lot of, when we joined with England, they wanted to sort of stamp out the Scottishness. They wanted us to become unified. And at one point, after the Highland Clearances and everything that happened with that, which involved huge numbers of Scots being forcibly removed from their homes to make way for sheep farming, which was considered more profitable for the landowners. They either had their homes burned or, forcibly, violently removed from their lands that they had occupied for centuries, from their homes, and people were either forced onto ships over to America, to Australia, without much say in it. They moved into big cities looking for work, looking for housing, or down into the lowlands where I currently live, nearer the beach. So, but it was a shift away from their homes, from their communities, from their traditions and all that kind of stuff. So really where I live, not a lot of that is practiced to this day. There are little pockets of it, of course, but a lot of it has been pushed out. And I often joke that most people have a Scottish granny, mainly because of the Highland Clearances and the hundreds of thousands of Scots that were pushed out of their lands and sent abroad. So after that, the English did not want too many reminders of the Highlanders and the community that they had tried to stamp out. And so they actually made speaking Gaelic, dressing like a Highlander, which included wearing tartan, practicing any of these cultures, made all of that illegal, and it came with a prison sentence. So it literally was stamped out in that way as well. So lots of different ways that it's kind of been lost over the years. And when I look at what was lost, the sort of traditional pagan and druid practices, a lot of it, all the sort of information I can get on it, is it was a lot of reverence for nature and the sky and the moon and the sun and the wind and all of that kind of stuff. Very basic but connected to nature. And some of that is sort of some of the celebrations, especially around solstices and things like that, are being sort of regenerated, I suppose. So I know one of my lovely former clients has actually been learning Gaelic. She messaged me to be like, "Oh, I'm learning Gaelic," and I was like, "Okay, well, nobody speaks it here. I don't speak it. It's not a traditionally spoken language. I think out of Scotland, maybe 50,000 registered Gaelic speakers, and the population's maybe 6 million. So it's very, very small. So it's definitely not something that it is still part of our culture, really. Getting back to the roots and back to my heritage. Obviously, we've looked into one side, my sort of mum's side, and all the fishermen. And then since I got back, I wanted to find out a bit more about my dad's family. He's very closed off, doesn't talk a lot about things. And I just didn't really know anything about that whole side of my family. So I reached out to one of my dad's cousins that I'd never met before, or a second cousin or something like that. And he was very kind and sat with me and joined up some dots for me about our family tree, and also gave me a copy of our family tree that traces a line all the way back to 1057, just 9 years before William the Conqueror. So a long, long time ago, being able to trace a family lineage back to then. And I feel very lucky to have that, to be able to connect me to Scotland again, and to be able to look into those deeper family stories and ties. You know, everybody, when they want to look up their heritage, wants to find out they were royalty or something in the past. But these guys weren't quite royalty, but they were sirs and viscounts, and there were a few castles in there as well. So really quite interesting, being able to look up where your former family castle was. But also, one of the records also shows that the last viscount was beheaded in the Tower of London and lost his viscounthood at the ripe old age of, I think he was 18 or something. So pretty horrific as well, information in there. And then later on, I believe the title was reinstated, but nobody has sort of taken it on and run with it. So that was interesting to look into and look and find where the family really came from, and some of the stories about what those people did, that family did. And apparently they were part of a crew that discovered Nova Scotia. So who knows? I don't know if that's something to be proud of or not. But I suppose they called it New Scotland, so maybe that is a true story. So who knows? But just, I find that very fascinating to dive into, and I know I'm very lucky to have records that go that far back. I know not everybody has that available to them, but part of all of this has really been me, reconnecting and not rejecting a part of me that is obviously very important. So fast forward a little bit. Since I've been back in Scotland and looking up these historical things, I've had the opportunity to be invited to various places, and they're all thin places. There's a whole story on the Moor 84. You can check that out on the podcast. I kept getting drawn to that very specific place. I was very kindly invited up to stay in a family friend's cottage, and I said that would be lovely. And when I got there, I realised it was a sacred glen, and every 2 minutes in this glen, when we were exploring, there would be another stone circle, another sacred site, a sacred hill. It was just wonderful. Finding carvings and getting to explore all these things was just very unexpected and very, very wonderful. So I've really been enjoying exploring these places and these sites, and loving it. So on to the So I just want you to think about, actually, before we go on to the next part, is there a part of you that you have been embarrassed about or rejecting? Not necessarily Scottish heritage, but any part of your upbringing or your family history that you know of. Because I think to really ascend, if there is a part of me that is holding on to shame around that, or some sort of deep embarrassment, then it needs to be healed and it needs to be looked at. So I feel there is so much power in being able to connect with our ancestors, and we wouldn't exist had it not been for them. And so rejecting that is really rejecting ourselves in a way. And so I think there's a beautiful healing can be had when we dive into that and allow ourselves to see the good and the bad. It's not all good and wonderful. It's still, there's some pretty hairy, horrible parts to it. I also found out that on another of these lines, our whole clan had been massacred at one point. I mean, really grim stuff. So it's not all just excitement and light and fun, let's go find the family castle. There can be some really dark pieces of the puzzle that come up in the process. But it is, I think, important. So there's that. Anyway, on to the on that high, beautiful note, on to my little story about my how this announcement has come together. So I will let you know that it is a retreat in Scotland. Very, very exciting. It's called the Celtic Doorway, and I will explain how it came to be, all the pieces of the flow puzzle that came to be with it, and why it feels so important. So last year, probably around October, November, I was at my cousin's and I was saying to her, I'm going to do a retreat and I am really excited to do it in Italy. And she just looked at me and she was like, why Italy? Why wouldn't you do it in Scotland? This is where you're from. We have wonderful places here. We have wonderful food and wonderful houses and so much history. And I was like, oh, that's actually not a bad idea. But part of me was still thinking, why would anybody want to come here? And that's my own story. And it's such a wonderful place and so unique and different. Why wouldn't anybody want to come here? So that seed for a Scottish retreat had been planted. And I came home that day and I started looking up where I wanted to go, the ley lines, what would be really potent. And I had picked a place near Loch Ness that had easy access to lots of sacred sites. And they all happened to also be Outlander filming locations, which was really fun as well. And also at the centre of this Scottish pentagram I mentioned before. So all of that seemed really amazing, but I also put it to one side and I thought I need to get my podcast launched. That is the most important thing. And I kind of almost forgot about the retreat idea. I'd sort of put it on hold, as it were. And then I was listening to my favourite astrologer. I've mentioned her probably in just about in every episode, Pam Gregory. I just love her. And she was doing a conversation with Magenta Pixie, who is a kind of psychic channeler, I suppose, and not somebody I listen to all the time. I was aware of her, but I don't listen to a lot of her stuff on the regular. But I was listening, obviously, to this because of Pam. And when Magenta started talking about Scotland, I stopped in my tracks. My ears pricked up and I was like, wait a second, what did she just say? So she said that for a long time, the Scottish vortexes and ley lines had been closed off and sealed. And during the Lionsgate in 2023, just last year, in August, they opened and a Celtic doorway was opened. And these incarnation lines will be open until 2026, which means coming to Scotland, between now and 2026 is going to be particularly potent and important to visit Scotland and the sacred sites. And she also made a comment about cement or stone dragons would come to life. And one of the places I have been absolutely itching to go to is this dragon fort up near Loch Ness that I just feel really, really drawn to for some reason. Now, I have a special connection to star forts and just a fascination with them. And I was sat next to one in Bermuda for 4 years. Looking back, I can see that that's what I was doing. I didn't know at the time. And in theory, Bermuda is roughly where the old Atlantean Empire was before it was lost under the waves. So I feel very connected to Atlantis, and I believe I was sitting there next to the Star Fort getting some sort of energy upload or download during those years when I lived in Bermuda. So I love star forts, and this one in Scotland is shaped like a dragon, which is crazy. It's a stone or concrete dragon, and they are coming into flight this year. And in Chinese astrology, it is the year of the wood dragon. And that is why when I was in Sweden, all of these dragons kept turning up, and I was like, oh my gosh, we are supposed to go and do some work around these sites and get to this fort and go and be part of this activation of the vortexes that have been closed for so long. So that was, I just had all over goosebumps when I was listening to that. I was like, oh, I get it. I'm almost like welling up with tears because I was like, that's why I'm here, right? Like it doesn't always make sense, right? All of these things. Why am I back here? I never wanted to be back here, but I'm back here reconnecting with all of this in the years leading up to these vortexes and ley lines being reopened. I have been sort of in training and going around all these sacred sites and reconnecting to this energy and my heritage to be able to do this. And that makes me quite emotional. So I was like, wow, that's interesting. But yet, you'll not be shocked, I still didn't go ahead and organize it. I don't know why. Anyway, I have then been listening through the podcast. I got introduced in one of the episodes. Janine Howard mentioned Robert Edward Grant, and I had not heard of him before. And ever since I did the interview with Janine, I have been loving listening to Robert Edward Grant. He is what they call a polymath, and he is basically a mathematician, a spiritual guy, a science guy, and he has been, it's hard to even explain what he's been doing, but he's been discovering brand new things in the pyramids or in the Great Pyramids of Egypt, and putting together a lot of the mathematics and just making some wonderful, exciting discoveries, also linking back to astrology. And a lot of this is happening around the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. So I love listening to him and his discoveries. Normally it's him being interviewed, but this time he's also got a new podcast, and he was interviewing Alex Ferrari, which is somebody else I really enjoy their podcast. So I was listening to their conversation and, back and forwards, and suddenly Alex, now this was probably a month ago, I hope this is right, but Alex mentioned Scotland, and my ears pricked up as always, and I was like, I wonder what he's going to say. And he started talking about the sacred significance of this castle, or Kirk Castle, and Clava Cairns, which is a stone circle. And I just stopped dead. I was in the gym. I was doing hamstring curls in the gym, listening to this podcast, and I just stopped dead, and my jaw just hit the floor. And I was like, oh, they were two sites I was going to visit on my retreat. Oh my goodness. And then Robert goes, oh my goodness. And Alex was like, nobody knows about these. Nobody goes there. They're way up in Scotland. Robert goes, oh, I know about them. I have links. I think my family has deep links to that place. They also are deeply linked to the Orion astrology, which I feel very connected to as well. And he said that they are linked to the Great Pyramids of Egypt, which are in an Orion formation, which I already knew, but these different sites. And so we were linking back to that. And I just stopped and I double checked and I was like, those two places are right where I want my retreat to be. That's where I found this incredible lodge. And I was like, that's it. It just has to happen. Too many coincidences, too many synchronicities. Of all the interviews I happen to listen to, never normally listen to Magenta Pixie, but of that was the little piece, the nugget that I listened to of that of that conversation. This is no longer a coincidence. This is important. So I came home and I was like, right, I need to organize this. And I was going to Sweden the next day. So on my way there in the airport, I started researching again and writing about it and figuring out exactly what I would do with this retreat. So it is now officially happening. It is happening the 21st of September to the 27th of September this year, 2024. It is a 6-night retreat in Scotland in a beautiful traditional lodge near Loch Ness. So the lodge is stunning. It's very 10 out of 10 views. It's all sort of wood panels with wood burning fires and a grand dining room and loads of ground and beautiful bedrooms, and it's just absolutely beautiful, and I have chills just talking about it. It is gorgeous and so perfect for this. So I have booked it for those dates, and I am so excited to share a little bit more about what the retreat will hold. And if you feel the call to join us, I would be so excited for that. And I can share more information and we can jump on a call and see if it is the right thing for you to join. So these retreats, I have run many retreats, masterminds, events in the past, and they are my favorite things. They are literally the highlight of my career, my business over the last 10 years. Magic happens at these retreats. Meeting people in person there's just nothing better. There is nothing gets you more results faster and deeper than doing it in a beautiful group in person in sacred space. Like there is nothing better. And I absolutely love it. I am in my element. Coaching and holding these spaces is it's just I never felt more alive than when I do that. It's just wonderful. So why would you want to join us? Well, you might have felt the call. So, you might be finally looking for some in-person connection after, the last 4 years adventures we've been on. The last retreat I tried to host was cancelled because of COVID. So, I'm craving the beautiful in-person connection of a retreat. And it is a little bit unconventional. So it is a business mastermind. So, it's a write-off. But it is an unconventional mastermind. So I like to say it has a spiritual twist and an infusion of Outlander to go along with it. So it is, in a sense, there is traditional business masterminding going on during the retreat. So you want to come with a block, with some issues. Maybe you're uncertain about what the rest of the year is going to hold or the following year. Maybe you are sort of pivoting your business. Maybe you're looking for clarity on what that looks like. Maybe you just want to have your messaging and your business model reviewed and whatever that looks like. Maybe you've been upper limiting. Maybe you've been feeling a bit burnt out. So all of those kind of things are issues you would definitely want to bring, well, hopefully not have, but that kind of thing we'll be able to work through during the week. Everybody gets dedicated time within the business mastermind to have our full attention and work through their stuff. We set intentions and we do some different group exercises, as well as the focused individual time. And then we're also going on beautiful excursions to these sacred sites where we will do activations and meditations and explore and check out all the different standing stones. For instance, we're going to the standing stones where Claire in Outlander goes back in time. That is Loch Cairns. In Outlander, it's called Craignadun. Craignada, something like that. And it is really near Culloden. So we will be going to visit the Culloden battlefield. I did go there as a child, and we'll be going back and doing the walk that Claire and Jamie would have done on the morning of Culloden to the Loch Cairns, where she went back through the stones. So we'll be doing that. And then there is, so the retreat itself is just near Loch Ness, so we go looking for the Loch Ness monster, and of course our beautiful sacred sites. The castle is right there. We'll go and explore that, and there are different churches and cathedrals where that have been important burial sites for the Fraser clan. That was Jamie in Outlander's clan. So they are important sites. So all of these sites, you don't need to be an Outlander fan to come. But if you are an Outlander fan, then you will have all of those boxes ticked. But they are significant and spiritual in their own right, out with the Outlander thing. But it's kind of cool that it links up at the same time. The other part, we will go to somewhere called Loch Moy. So it is right bang in the centre of this Scottish pentagram. So it feels very important that we go there and really seed the energy and ground the energy in there, from all of the places you've come, all of the places you've done your grid work, from wherever you are, for wherever you're going back to. It feels very, very important. And like I said, that spot has this same sacred geometry as the pyramids of Egypt. So very important in this Celtic Doorway activation that I feel very called to do. Now, if those dates in September 21st, 27th don't work, I am potentially looking at doing a second round in October, the 19th to 25th, but that will only get booked once September is full. So potentially, if September doesn't work, then reach out and let me know about if you're interested in October, and I will add you to the wait list for that. So again, it's 6 nights, so 5 full days. I was originally just going to do 4 days, 5 nights, but I just wanted it to feel expansive, to feel like everybody had enough time, that we weren't rushing, especially when we have sacred sites and exploring to do. And also having that extra space will give us at least one free afternoon, and maybe a little bit more depending how we're getting on during the week. But we want to sort of pace ourselves and make sure everybody's getting the breakthrough they need, the plan they need, the activation, whatever our intentions are, that is being fully met and fulfilled. So we will we'll just see how we are getting on during the week. I love my containers. They must be containers of flow. So really, once you book and make the activation, then your adventure begins effectively until we wrap up afterwards. We have a few calls to make sure everybody is integrating and implementing after the retreat as well. So it's a really beautiful full container, full retreat, but also with enough space that you can have some downtime and let it all sink in and just really enjoy yourself. I want everybody to leave feeling really clear and excited and nourished in a way. And that, talking about nourishment, we will have a beautiful private chef catering all of our meals. All of that's included. So everybody gets to experience our beautiful Scottish cuisine. And sometimes people laugh at that because they're like, oh, does that mean fried Mars bars and like fish and chips? And while you're more than welcome to try that if you like, it is a lot more than that. We have lots and lots of beautiful, fresh Scottish produce, and the meals will be built around that. And introducing you to lots of beautiful and yummy Scottish food. So it's quite a Scottish immersion in that sense. I want everyone to really feel like they've had a full Scottish experience by the time they leave. So you've got your business piece, the spiritual piece, you're exploring Outlander piece, and a really beautiful Scottish experience as well. So really looking forward to all that. It's going to be just wonderful, and knowing that we are primed for these energetics, and knowing that these vortexes have opened, it just all feels like very exciting. So whoever comes is going to have a beautiful activation and the time of their lives. If it's for you, if you are a visionary female entrepreneur who wants to sort of break through, or maybe bring more spiritual wisdom into your business, or and really connect with other like-minded souls and reconnect back to your own heritage, whatever that is. You definitely don't need Scottish heritage to attend. And we'll just have a refresh. We're going to hit the reboot button, and you're going to feel really inspired and excited when you leave. So probably not for anybody who is not really into any of the spiritual stuff. You would still get something out of the business masterminding part, but the rest might not sit with you. And we want people who come to really play full out, join in all the sessions, come to the meditations, come on the excursions. We want to be doing this together as a group, and to really do it together. That's the whole point. Create connections, support each other, and do it that way. So let's see what else. So yeah, I have a beautiful document to send to anybody who is interested. I've got some beautiful testimonials in there from some of the last times I've done similar type mastermind things. And I just a big thing for me, actually, which was lovely when I was going through all this and pulling this information all together, was really reminding me why I do this and why I do this work in the first place. And hearing these people share the testimonials and how they were feeling before and how they were feeling afterwards. Somebody telling me their business confidence went from a 1 to a 10 is just magical. And she was so excited about the next decade that she was like, I'm going to start implementing at the airport on the way home, and I can't wait to do this and that. And, and she's just been going from strength to strength over the last few years. So it's just lovely to see. And some of the feedback has been very, very lovely. Somebody says it's woo-woo AF in the best way. Yes, it is. Somebody said they just loved being seen, and that was one of their biggest breakthroughs. One of my gifts is being able to see people, being able to see your full potential, your biggest vision. We tap into Akashic records and really use them to help guide us as well, which is beautiful. So there's a lot of beautiful work that happens in these containers. But yeah, I'm more than happy to share this bigger document with anybody who is interested, and it is currently early bird pricing. So if you do want to join us, I suggest you get in now, and I will share more about it over the next few weeks and months as we fill this up. So and you're welcome to book a call with me and find out and get your questions answered if you are wondering if this is something that would be right for you. So and the last piece, well, I should definitely let you know that my dog will be attending. Bella is a sweet little rescue girl, and she is non-barking and very loving and loves all humans and will be very happy to snuggle up and take some belly rubs from you if you would so desire. So if you're definitely not a dog person or allergic, then it's probably not for you, I'm afraid. But the beautiful thing with being able to run a retreat in my own country is being able to bring her. She's not an official emotional support dog, but she will be the retreat emotional support dog. But yeah, and one thing I will just say, one of the comments from the testimonials that I went through and shared, I think it says a lot actually about me and my style. And while my background is as in business and finance and accounting, this girl in her testimonial says, if you're looking for a typical business coach that's going to give you the ABCs of business strategy, Jo is not the woman for you. If you want to actually experience deep transformation and show up and do the inner work and emotional healing piece that is so important to really transform through blocks and limitations and claim your spot as an entrepreneur and business person in this world, then Jo is the woman for you. I wouldn't hesitate in recommending her to anybody. She was walking out with renewed passion for her business and fully downloaded the mission and purpose she's here to do. So watch out, world. So yeah, that's kind of my style, is getting deep and looking at things from maybe a perspective that you haven't looked at. I'm very much obviously flow and sort of not so much the hustle piece. I don't believe just doing the same thing a bit harder is going to get you results. And to quantum leap, you really need a different perspective and a different approach. And that is really what we share and bring forward. So anything else to share? Anyway, I will share a bit more in the coming weeks. But yeah, there are different options. There are single rooms with beautiful big double beds. There's some twin shares that are a little bit cheaper. So we have all the options there for you. And yeah, it's going to be pretty freaking magical. So I'm going to leave it there. I will put the details to contact me to get a hold of this document. Also, the link to book a call with me to discuss if you what you want, wish to join us. And I think that's it. So as always, thank you so much for listening and for being here. I really appreciate it. I would appreciate any likes or shares, reviews, subscriptions, all the things. I would super appreciate that. And that's it. Take care. I will see you in the next episode, and I will speak to you soon. Bye.